In this podcast episode, Professor Steve Keen shares his deep insights on the escalating conflict involving Iran, the geopolitical ramifications, and the profound economic consequences threatening global stability. The conversation ranges from military strategies and nuclear threats to critical supply chain vulnerabilities, the role of energy and resource dependencies, and the looming risk of global famine. Additionally, Professor Keen delves into the broader economic outlook, including the implications of AI on employment and potential financial crashes, while touching on political dysfunction and pathways toward more sustainable economic models. Professor Keen frames the current war as an existential threat with ramifications far beyond the Middle East. He asserts that Israel, backed by American political will, particularly under former President Trump, underestimated both Iran's preparedness and the complexity of dismantling Iranian power. Instead of a swift victory, the conflict has escalated into a multidimensional confrontation involving attacks on infrastructure, power grids, and a prolonged military struggle. The war is not simply a regional issue, but a global fault line, with Iran's resilience being far greater than initially believed due to its decentralized military organization and robust underground capabilities. Keen highlights the interplay of religious and historical rivalries as a backdrop, noting the long-standing animosity between Shiite Iran and Sunni-dominated neighboring states, fueled by Israel's desire to neutralize Iran as a regional power. A focal point of the discussion is the strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime choke point through which about 20 to 30% of global fertilizer, helium, and oil supplies transit. Iran's ability to control or block this passage has dire consequences for global supply chains, especially given that many essential materials indispensable to agriculture and semiconductor manufacturing are sourced through this route. Professor Keen warns that ongoing or escalated conflict risks shutting down these supply lines, thereby imperiling food production worldwide and potentially causing famine due to dramatic fertilizer shortages. The viewer is made aware of the critical dependencies on helium, an irreplaceable inert gas vital for semiconductor production, much of which originates from gas fields straddling Saudi Arabia and Iran. The potential disruption of this supply would cripple the global electronics industry, particularly affecting major producers like South Korea. Keen emphasizes the intrinsic link between energy availability and global economic output. Historical data reveal that fluctuations in energy consumption directly correlate with changes in the gross world product, underscoring how the loss of 20% of liquefied natural gas and significant oil supplies from the Gulf region could trigger a worldwide economic contraction. The war's impact on the region's oil production is especially critical because the petroleum from this area is a specialized product, not easily replaceable by other oil sources. The conversation dispels the common economic myth that oil is a homogeneous commodity and stresses the uniqueness and irreplaceability of Middle Eastern oil for the global economy. One of the gravest concerns Keen discusses is the risk of nuclear escalation, particularly the scenario dubbed the Samson Doctrine. This involves Israel potentially resorting to its nuclear arsenal in desperation if it faces existential defeat, causing widespread destruction beyond the immediate region. While Iran does not currently have confirmed nuclear weapons, the fear is that Israel's nuclear capabilities might provoke a catastrophic retaliatory cycle. Keen points to flawed political leadership and the dangers inherent in sole authority nuclear launch powers vested in individuals like the U.S. president, increasing the risk of rash decisions. Yet, he also hopes Iran might disable Israel's nuclear weapons through its advanced missile capabilities, which would ironically make the region safer by removing the nuclear threat altogether. Keen is critical of Trump's involvement, describing his strategy as a pump and dump scheme aimed at manipulating oil prices for personal and political gain. He suggests that Trump lacks genuine understanding of the geopolitical complexities and instead projects his narcissistic traits onto his decisions, driven largely by a desire for attention and a desire to secure a lasting legacy. Keen portrays Trump as a figure who repeatedly claims victory despite ongoing conflict and its toll, illustrating the dissonance between political narratives and on-the-ground realities. The discussion highlights the disconnect between political elites, who may be compromised or under undue influence, and the general populace, increasingly disillusioned and opposed to the war. A grim future looms if the conflict persists, Keane warns, with global agricultural systems at risk due to fertilizer shortages caused by disrupted supply chains. He paints a stark picture of food insecurity, highlighting the devastating prospect of famine, especially in populous and vulnerable countries like India. The Gulf region's power infrastructure attacks could make countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE uninhabitable, displacing millions and crippling a major energy supplier. Keane underscores how fragile modern societies have become, as even short-term energy shortages can cascade into crises affecting food production, logistics, and everyday survival. Despite the public rhetoric, Keane predicts that U.S. ground troops will be deployed in Iran, but warns that it would be a suicidal mission due to Iran's prepared and decentralized defense structures. The war on this terrain, with its mountainous geography and divided military commands, poses extreme challenges. Keane sees the conflict as becoming a quagmire similar to previous prolonged U.S. military engagements, with potentially high casualties and no clear end in sight. Switching to the economy, Keane explains how AI investment is driving an unsustainable boom and bust cycle. With tech giants spending vast sums on AI infrastructure far beyond current revenue returns, the market is headed toward a severe contraction. This mirrors historical technology investment bubbles, where excessive initial enthusiasm and capital inflows give way to widespread failure and economic downturn. Keane predicts a significant financial crash within 1 to 2 years, affecting not only tech sectors but the broader economy as labor replacing AI and robotics dramatically reshape employment markets. Keane foresees that automation and AI could eliminate up to 50% of current jobs, particularly white-collar, entry-level, and repetitive roles, faster than society can adapt. He identifies 3 labor groups likely to remain relevant: experts with deep skills, individuals proficient at managing AI systems, and roles requiring human-to-human interaction. Confronted with mass displacement, Keane suggests that universal basic income, UBI, may become necessary to provide a social safety net, enabling people to survive in a world where traditional employment is no longer universally available. Keane critiques mainstream economic thought for ignoring the physical realities and limits of energy and resource consumption. He emphasizes that energy underpins all economic production and that ignoring planet-bound constraints leads to system fragility and potential collapse. Keane lauds China's model of combining collective societal goals with individual incentives, advocating for more cooperative systems rather than purely competitive capitalism dominant in the West. He warns that without respecting environmental and economic limits, society risks falling off the so-called Seneca cliff, a rapid collapse triggered by overexploitation and conflict. When asked about personal financial strategies, Keane demurs from specific investment advice, arguing that individual actions have limited impact when the macroeconomic system is unstable. Instead, he encourages self-sufficiency measures, such as adopting home solar energy for resilience, and, if possible, growing one's own food to mitigate supply chain disruptions. Money, he stresses, becomes meaningless if goods and services are unavailable. Keane is skeptical about current political leadership worldwide, criticizing election-focused systems for enabling narcissistic and megalomaniacal figures to assume power. He draws on historic Athenian democracy practices, suggesting that more randomized or collective decision-making processes would be less prone to failure. Keane calls for electing leaders who prioritize human-centered and sustainable economic policies over neoliberal agendas, which he views as a root cause of contemporary problems. Finally, Keane critiques cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin for their enormous energy usage and inherent inefficiency. He foresees pressure to significantly reduce energy consumption, leading to a collapse in systems like Bitcoin, which depend on resource-heavy mining processes. This realization, coupled with environmental constraints, points to the need for more sustainable technological and economic infrastructures in the near future.